Good afternoon. We're so happy that you were able to join us for today's Take Flight session. We're honored to have the Director of International Student and Scholar Service, Lauren Jacobson Bridges, with us today. Today, she's going to tell us a little bit about who she is, what she does, and how she got there. Thank you so much for being here, Lauren. I'm going to turn it over to our moderator for today's session. She's a Career Center staff member and the graduate assistant for our internship area, Macy Merriweather.
Hi, thank you so much, Jeanette. And thank you again, Lauren, for being here and being willing to share all about your experiences. So if you could just introduce yourself and your roles on campus, and that'll get us started.
Great, thank you so much for having me. As it was mentioned, my name is Lauren Jacobson Bridges, and I serve as the director of our International Student and Scholar Services Office, which is a unit within the Department of International Affairs here at UNT. The Department of International Affairs as a whole really has to do with what's called campus internationalization. So there's 4 or 5 of units within our department, and we all work towards some sort of international component. So the Study Abroad Office, our Partnerships Office, our International Recruiting Office, my office, and then we also have our Intensive English Language Institute, which teaches academic English to folks who are learning academic English. Specifically, my office, the International Student and Scholar Services Office, we really focus on immigration for anyone who is coming to UNT for the purpose of studying or doing research or teaching. So our customers, I would say, are our international students, F1, J1 visa holders, and as well as our international faculty and staff. So any of our faculty who have come to UNT specifically to become faculty members, but are maybe citizens of another country, I assist them with their immigration documents as well. I think naturally, because we become sometimes the first point of contact for immigration, we also help with some other more general questions about how UNT works, how higher ed in the United States works, connecting people with resources on campus and in the community as well.
Awesome, thank you so much. That sounds just really interesting and exciting. Could you kind of tell us about a normal day in the life of working in the Student and Scholars Office? And then also, are there any duties that you weren't expecting, kind of the unwritten ones that you perform now?
Sure. So for me, in my role as director, I would say that no 2 days are probably the same, which is exciting, but also challenging. So, I spend a lot of my time thinking about long-term strategy for our office. I am in meetings a lot. I'm in a lot of meetings, and then responding to different crises, those types of things. But more generally speaking, our advisors, they meet with our students daily. They process immigration document requests. They're working more with students one-on-one throughout the day. I also do the immigration paperwork for our faculty and staff specifically. So I'm also, gathering paperwork, interacting with faculty, interacting with department chairs, deans, to get information and those processes moving forward. I think, something that I didn't necessarily expect as I progressed in my career is, as the director, I'm not as involved in individual student advising. And I think most people who are interested in higher education or international education, they do it because they love students and they love interacting with students. And so as I've progressed in my career, that's something that I'm actually further from the thing that I first loved. I'm, slowly moving further from, but I still try to make time. I pick up advising hours, things like that, because that's what I originally loved about my job. And now I think more strategically and more widespread. So I'm still supporting our students. That's still at the heart of everything that I do, but it's not as one-on-one as it once was.
Can I ask a quick question?
Please.
I'm just curious when we think about, so you talked about when you started out in your career and sort of the transitions that you've made in the time that you've put into the field. What does that look like? So starting where you were primarily in that role of student facing and supporting the international student population up until now, just so we can get a sense of sort of the commitment that you've put into this field.
Sure. So I actually am a UNT alum. So when I was an undergraduate student at UNT, I was a work study student, and I knew I wanted to do something in international studies. So I was in the international studies program here at UNT a decade ago. And I just lucked out and I got a work study job in what was then our international admissions department. That doesn't exist anymore. It's integrated into admissions, but I did that for a little bit, and I immediately loved being able to talk to people from all around the world every single day. That was just like the greatest. And so I eventually asked for UNT to create an internship within the immigration office for me, because I decided this is something I wanted to do. So they trained me a little bit beyond, a work study student as an intern at UNT. And when I graduated, I went off into the field. I left UNT and went into the field. And so as an advisor, I entered in with my bachelor's degree with a little bit of on-the-job training as an intern, but my bachelor's was in international studies. So my background was mostly on foreign affairs, political science, that type of background. I would say that isn't necessary to do my job. It helps to have this general understanding of the world and US foreign affairs, but it's not a requirement. So I think the requirement is wanting to do the job, really, because you can learn all the rules. And so, as I was in my advisor jobs, I was doing one-on-one advising. I was doing presentations to groups of students on campus, specifically about immigration regulations relating to student status, so F1, J1. And then through my time as an advisor, I was mentored by my boss and received additional professional development training through our professional organization, which is called NAFSA, NAFSA. And I highly recommend that anyone who's interested in international education plug in to NAFSA. They're like the quintessential professional organization for international education. So not only what I do, which is bringing students to the United States, but also for anyone who might be interested in study abroad advising, sending students outside of the United States to study in a different country, as well as recruitment, English as a second language training, all of those things. It encompasses all of it. And so I was really plugged in with NAFSA. I did I volunteered with them as my professional organization and grew and attended trainings. And then in higher education, there's kind of this culture of, in order to move up, you have to move out. So I continued to leave institutions in order to progress in my career. So I was at 3 or 4 different institutions, and each time having basically a promotion and in some cases, maybe not a title promotion, but it expanded my portfolio of advising. So I would go from just advising F1 international students to also advising H-1B workers, faculty, and staff, until eventually I was fortunate enough to come back and lead the office that trained me, that raised me to where I am now, which, now I'm not doing as much as of the day-to-day advising and processing for our international students, but I'm still, I set the procedure and the practice for how advising is done at UNT.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jeanette, for the question. That was really insightful. I'm wondering, you listed so many positions, and I have a question also. If there was a favorite position that you've held, and why, kind of why you liked it. I know you said you really liked student facing. Was that your favorite, or is what you're doing now more your speed?
All of my positions have been very different. And the institutions I worked at have been different, which is also something that I recommend anyone doing who is trying to sort out their career is, even if you've decided, oh, I love higher education, there's so many different institutions within higher education that you get a completely different culture, a completely different role, no matter where you're at. So I mentioned I started at UNT. I then went to Southern Methodist University, which is a small private institution, a very expensive institution located in Dallas proper. The student body is very different at SMU than it is at UNT, for better or worse, right? That's not what I'm saying. It's just very different. And with that comes an institution that views higher education and their role very different. So from there, the student population is smaller at SMU. So you have more of what I would consider like boutique services. There's a lot more personalized services. We had more money to do events and things like that for our students. There was a lot more relationship building that I was able to do there that I loved. But then from there, I went and I was a one-person office at an academic healthcare institution. So then I was a one-person office doing everything for 200 students, and talk about relationship building. Oh no, it's frozen. Hear me? Yeah, okay. So relationship building with 200 students tops was, I knew everyone. It was great. I loved it so much. They were all graduate students though, and serving only a graduate student population is completely different from serving an 18-year-old student population. And I found very quickly that I missed serving undergraduate students. I missed being a part of that undergraduate experience. I missed being at a liberal arts institution. Yet still from there, I went to another academic healthcare institution. I went to UT Southwestern because it gave me the opportunity to learn about more diverse visa types. And that was very different. We basically did not serve students at all. We were mostly serving postdoctoral researchers, research faculty. It was hardly zero student interaction. And the students I did interact with were, again, they were graduate students. They were medical science researchers for the most part. And I loved it there, but I knew in my heart I needed to be back at a liberal arts institution. And so I found my way back to UNT. And all of those experiences, they were so different, yet they were all within international education. They were all within higher education, but it was just so different because the people we were serving, it's different.
So I wanted to ask, so I think one of the things that's interesting, you kind of hit on a couple things, and Macy, you may have this question, but just sort of thinking about your experience. You started at UNT, obviously the structure and the way that students were served when you started is different than the way it is now. But, when we think about maybe two things, an international student wants to get engaged with your office. Like, what does that process look like? How can they get started? How can you help? And then the second thing that comes to mind more within the space of this session and what we're hoping to achieve is, what, as far as a student that would want to get involved, you made a recommendation. around staying connected with that professional association. But if there's a student that's interested more in working with this particular student population, how might they get started and stay connected at UNT? So maybe more front facing as far as your clients and how you support the students, and then how might you advise or offer insight for a student that's interested in pursuing the field?
Yeah, absolutely. So, speaking specifically to international students who might want to engage with my office, so likely you've received an email from me at some point in your inbox. I sent out a big email today about planning for fall enrollment and immigration requirements. So all of our international students should have my direct email, but also our office, we do virtual advising. All of that's on our website. And you can get to our website from international.unt.edu. And so that's how you can connect more directly with my office and our immigration questions. But I would be remiss to not mention my colleagues who are in our marketing and outreach department, who do student programming and student events. And, just on this last Friday, they, in conjunction with the Bangladeshi Student Association, they hosted Mother Language Day, and it was 2 hours of poetry readings in various languages from around the world, led by students, and it was just like the best thing ever. And so there's constantly events going on in that regard, which I recommend for anyone, international students, domestic students, anyone who has any just even tangential interest in the world. There's all kinds of events that they do. And then we have, if you're interested actually in international education and going into it as a profession, we have it's been kind of quiet this year because of COVID, but we have a peer mentor, an international peer mentor association. And so that pairs up students who are at UNT with incoming brand new international students to kind of just connect them and create a mentorship experience. Any type of involvement in like peer mentorship, or our Intensive English Language Institute has a conversation partners, so you can sign up to practice English with one of our Intensive English Language Institute students. Those types of experiences are going to look good on a resume as you go apply for jobs after graduation. It shows this continued interest in the field.
That's really cool, and something I didn't know that UNT offered. So that is good information to have, whether you're pursuing the field or just want to practice English. I'm wondering if there are some myths that you've always wanted to kind of bust about what you do. If people have said, oh, you do this, but you kind of don't.
Yeah, so because we deal with immigration regulations, I think there's this assumption that sometimes happens where I work for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and that is not true. I do not work for ICE. I do not work for the Department of Homeland Security. I work for the University of North Texas. Our office exists to support international students. So while, yes, there are federal regulations that we are responsible for explaining and following and maintaining compliance at UNT, I don't have like ICE on speed dial. I have absolutely no relationship with them. The function of our office is to make the immigration requirements of being an F1 or J1 international student less stressful. It is stressful. It will always be stressful, but our job is to make it a little less stressful if we can.
I think that's good to know too, for any students wanting to come seek help in your office. Knowing that it's a safe space to be is huge.
Absolutely.
It looks like we might have an audience question.
I have one question. I'm sorry, like, I don't know if you can hear me well, the place I am. Okay, I'm an international student, but my visa is not, you helped us with the whole process, Laura. But our visa is not the student anymore. Like we are under the H1, I'm under the H4 visa now because of my husband, like I'm dependent. So I'd like to know what kind of job opportunities, what are the options that I have within the UNT that I could volunteer? What are the things that are allowed me to do other than studying that I could do that will help me to build my resume and have more experience and things like that other than studying?
Yeah, so specifically for like if you're interested in what I do, I mean, volunteering within these student organizations are crucial. And I forgot to mention, UNT also has a student-led organization called World Echoes, which is specifically for students who are interested in international and cross-cultural experiences. So that's actually a student-led organization, which is really great. They do amazing things every year. Speaking specifically about, visa type, if your visa type doesn't allow you to work, which many international students run into this problem, right? Is like when you graduate, everyone wants to see work experience, but your visa hasn't allowed you to really work either at all if you're in an H4 visa status, or if you're in F1 only on campus, right? And so I think that's when it becomes important to be able to explain, and our friends in the Career Center probably can help with this, but like translatable skills. So even though you have not been in a full-time position since your degree or whatever, you have learned project management because you do group projects and you were like the group leader on your group project. So actually you're a really great project manager. You understand how to deal with competing project deadlines, and competing priorities, which is a big thing in work. So because you've been a student with competing project deadlines. And then any type of student organization leadership position also shows, right? Because when you're in a student org, you are doing things like putting on events, fiscal responsibility, budget management, if your organization collects dues. So then it becomes how you market yourself.
Yeah, and I can add to that from the Career Center perspective, just to let you know, there's a couple things that you can do that don't require you to work. So obviously building out particular skills. So if you've done research and you're thinking about a particular career, and you say like, this is what I'm interested in, oftentimes what we recommend that you do is what's called a gap analysis. So you take a position description that you have found that you say like, wow, this is really interesting. This is something that I would want to do. So maybe we take Lauren's job description and we look at the pieces of her job description, and you take that, and just like Lauren mentioned, you write down like, okay, they're looking for this particular skill. Where have I had a chance to develop that? Did I do that in a course project? Did I do that as a part of volunteer work or leadership? But then there's supplemental tools that you can add that don't cost you anything additional as a student. So doing things like LinkedIn Learning or Coursera. So those are courses where you can enhance your skills on top of what you're learning academically. And that is particularly helpful if the major that you are in is very pliable, meaning that it is very marketable across various industries. So it's very rare that a particular major will limit you in your career opportunities. A lot of it is really just understanding those skills. They used to call them transferable skills. They started calling them soft skills. Now they're calling them human skills. I'm not entirely sure which is best, but sort of identifying those things like Lauren had said. So Coursera is an option. LinkedIn Learning is also an option, and there's no cost there for either of those. And the other piece is a partnership that the UNT started last spring called The Forage. And so that platform used to be called Inside Sherpa. It's based out of Australia, But basically what it is projects that active employees of major corporations have done, and you can go through that project from start to finish and get a grade or a sense of completion, and you can add that project onto your resume. So just like you can add a LinkedIn Learning course, and LinkedIn Learning has what are called learning paths. So if you say, I want to be in project management, you can go onto LinkedIn Learning, go under the learning path for project manager or one of those, and it tells you all the courses that you can be taking to beef up your skills. And so if you complete them, then there's certifications that you can add to your resume. Career coach in our office can certainly help you with all of those pieces, but same thing with Forage. So Forage does not cost anything. There is no money exchange. So Forage is also another option that you can pursue. And we're in the process in the university of utilizing our alumni network to do something very similar to Forage. So that's not here yet, but it's on its way. But there are definitely a lot of really great tools. When you look at a position description and you think, have I done those things before? Brainstorm out from all of your experiences, academic, volunteer, leadership, paid, whatever. And I guarantee you've developed a lot more skills than you might think you have. And then partner and schedule an appointment with one of the career coaches in our staff, because I think the benefit for us in the Career Center is we don't work with you as closely as an academic advisor might or as a professor might. We only see you every so often. So oftentimes we can act like the individual that would be hiring you for that position. We don't have that comprehensive sense of everything that you can do. And we can really help you to ask the questions about, okay, this job's asking if you have skills in such and such area. And we can help you to brainstorm out where those might have come from. And hopefully by doing that, you become more confident and comfortable talking about those skills as a viable part of who you are. So hopefully that's an additional piece that's helpful as well. Thanks
Thank
for the
you so
links.
much, both.
Yeah, and Macy dropped the links to both in the chat too.
So it looks, oh, go ahead, Macy. Sorry.
We had a question in the chat pop up. So what would you say is the hardest part about your job, the best part, and then the biggest surprise that you weren't expecting when you got it?
So these are really great questions. I think that the hardest part is also maybe probably why I like, one of the reasons I love my job is that things are constantly changing. So because what I do is so tied to federal regulation, it's federal regulation. The last 4 years have been quite a whirlwind in that there were constant immigration updates. And then even in the last 90 days, there have been several immigration updates, and that is never going to change because immigration rules are rooted in the federal government. And so the hardest part, I think, is making sure that I'm staying engaged with what's happening on the federal level, as well as what's happening on the state level, because I currently work at a state institution, being at UNT. And then also on the university level, making sure I understand what's happening at the university level, and then how all those levels interact with each other. It's quite challenging. But it's enjoyable because I never get bored, right? So yeah, I think that's probably the hardest part, is just staying up to date with immigration changes. But that is, it's the job. I think the best part though is student success. When we have students be successful and graduate, or if they're in a tough spot and I can help out, I mean, that's just like the best feeling. And knowing anytime I get the sense that I've made the immigration process a little less stressful for someone, that's the best part. It's just like knowing that I've made this very stressful thing a little less stressful is what I hope to do in everything that I do. And I think like the biggest surprise about the job, I think now that I'm in a director role, I'm so integrated with so many other offices on campus. And I don't know that I ever really appreciated that when I was more on a one-on-one advising role. On a regular basis, I am talking to the Career Center, Student Financial Services, Scholarships and Financial Aid. It's just like, it's constant. So like, I don't think I really ever realized how integrated I would be with all of the other offices and the connections that would be needed, the personal skills that would be needed on a professional level around campus. And then I see that there's a follow-up question in the chat, which is there someone in the office that monitors all the immigration changes? Or are you expected to stay up on your own? And so it's me. That's my job. It's my job to stay up to date and then also to communicate that to the provost and the president and the deans and as well as the students, right? So in my role as director, there's an expectation that I'm staying up to date on that for everyone, students that it impacts, but also the university, so that the university knows what's happening with their students and maybe impacts some of the decisions that the university is making as a whole. And so what tools I use for that, I'm NAFSA, our professional organization, which is really confusing. The acronym is NAFSA, but they don't use the acronym anymore. So if you Google it, it's NAFSA, the Association of International Educators, which is confusing, but alas, this is how it is. So I use that. They have immigration attorneys on staff that push out information to the rest of us to help us understand it. Our community of people who do what I do we're very close knit. And so I have directors at other institutions around the US that I bug on different days about different questions. So like if I have an H-1B work authorization question, I have this group of people that I go to and I say, hey, what are you doing as a best practice in your university? And if I have a question about F1 student advising, I have this other group of people on my group text and my cell phone that I'm like, hey, y'all, what are you doing as your best practice here? And so we all rely on each other as colleagues and peers at other institutions to just, benchmark and discuss best practices.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for your questions. Keep sending them as you get them. So if it does at all, how does this job affect your lifestyle? And then how do you practice self-care?
So I would say, when you work for a state institution in the state of Texas, you wear two hats, right? You wear your state employee hat and you wear your private citizen hat. And sometimes those hats are at conflict. And so I care very deeply about our students and our office. And I care very deeply about my own political beliefs. And it's quite difficult to say federal regulation says one thing and and this is the line I have to hold because I'm currently speaking with my state employee hat, my federal compliance hat. But then personally, I have this whole other, thing going on inside of my brain as a private citizen. And I have all these other activities that I believe in as a private citizen. And so I think that that's very difficult to manage. And it has impacted me, like as a human being, to have to carry these two incongruous at sometimes party lines, right? Like my own party line that's true to me, and then the party line that I have to have as a state employee. And so I think it's just important to remember that your job is not everything. It is not who you are as a human being. It is definitely something you can do that you believe in and you're passionate about. And that's what I believe in my job. I'm passionate about my job, but it's not everything there is about me. I am also married and the mother of 2 fur children. And these are the things that are important to me outside of that. And so, I protect the time as best I can with my wife and our pets and the life that we live together. And I make sure that as a private citizen, I'm doing the things that are more in line with my values. If my job is maybe a little off sometimes, but I truly believe in what I'm doing, and I try to focus on the long-term impacts, the one-on-one individual impacts, and that helps.
I just want to say I'm really glad that you said that about your job is not who you are, because I think it's most definitely something within U.S. culture that is ingrained or can feel forced. And so I know for me, it took me a long time to realize that they are separate things. So it's always, I think, helpful as a reminder, especially when we're trying to identify what our career path is going to look like. That is just a part of who we are. And, the career can be a pathway to facilitate certain aspects of what gives you joy and gets you excited, but it's not everything. I kind of equate it to, you don't only have one friend for all of your favorite things. Like there's always a person that you go to for certain things. It's typically not the same person over and over. And I think trying to identify what to do with a career, there can be a lot of pressure, and like, I've got to get it right, and it's got to be this thing, and it's got to fit exactly right. So I just wanted to say, I'm really glad to have heard you say that.
Well, and I think, like you said, though, it's something I've had to unlearn. I was taught like, okay, and it's especially difficult when you're passionate about what you do. When there is that passion and that fire, you're like, oh, like this is all that there is, but it's not. I mean, it's not. And I've really had to unlearn that and work very hard to unlearn that and set boundaries. But it's made me a better person, I think, as an actual person, which then makes me a better employee when I have those boundaries and that balance.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. We have a few more minutes left, so if anyone has any other questions, you can unmute yourself or throw it in the chat really quick. I am, while we think of like last questions, I'm going to drop a link in the chat to a survey. It's super quick, and it's just going to kind of help us get your feedback on what you thought of today's event and just help us with future programming efforts. So if you could fill that out just whenever you get the chance. I am putting that in the chat right now. This is also being recorded, so it's going to pop up on our website at the end of this week or next week, and we'll have captions and everything thrown in there too. And it looks like we have another question in the chat. So what jobs and experience did you have before that led you to be able to get to this job? If you just kind of want to quickly recap on what you had said earlier.
Sure. So I actually I had an internship when I was at UNT as an undergrad in this office. And then I worked my way up through the different levels. However, I would say, I'm a hiring manager. There, we have a staff of about 8 people. And so while this is not my personal experience as a hiring manager, I think I can speak to what I look for advisors. And so when I'm talking about our advisors or our more entry-level positions, honestly, I don't look for, yes, it's helpful if someone has a degree in international studies or higher education or something like that. I like seeing that because I'm like, oh, there's interest there. But we have people in our department who their background is in like social work or communications. Actually, someone in our office, their background is in nutrition, but they decided they didn't want to be a nutritionist, and they had a really compelling story about why they wanted to be involved with international students, and I loved it, and they're a great employee. And so I would say for me, what I look for are more the soft skills. So I look more for like the customer service experience, because essentially what we do is a certain amount of customer service. I look for some sort of evidence that the person can be detail oriented, because there's a lot of small, tiny details in what we do. More than I look, because I can train anyone on rules and regulations. That's just memorizing rules and regulations. And to be honest, we have a huge procedure manual. And so honestly, if someone can read, they can they can learn what we're doing. For our more entry-level positions, I honestly look for customer service, being detail oriented, and yes, some sort of interest in international something. Like I mentioned, student orgs, World Echoes. If I saw that on someone's resume for an entry-level position, I'd be like, great, I want to interview them and talk to them more. My job does not require, I would say, a degree in a specific field. Yes, it helps move your resume to the top of the pile, I think, to be in some sort of political science, foreign policy, or higher education, student success type academic background, but it's definitely not required. On the job training is totally okay as long as the soft skills and the interest are there.
Thank you again, Lauren, for attending. And Macy, thank you so much for serving as our moderator for today's session. Really do appreciate both of you.